Members, can I have the whip? Senator Dr. Halwale, Senator Boni, Senator Boni, Senator Boni Halwale, kindly approach the. Honorable members, let's be in order. Let's be in order. Honorable members, be in order. Let us resume our seats, members. The Honorable Mundigi, kindly resume your seat. SC, kindly resume your seat. Honorable members, let us be in order. Kindly resume your seat, Senator. Senator, kindly resume your seat. We shall division on this. We shall defer voting on this one. Members. Let's move to the next one. Sorry? Give me this one. Sorry? Yes. Honorable members. Honorable members. Honorable members. Honorable members. Senator Abbas, kindly resume your seat. Members, we have ruled that we defer voting on this one, and consequently, order number 9 proceeds. Number 10, sorry.
Order number 10.
Members, order number 9 is also deferred. Clerk, let's move to the next order.
Order number 10, the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bills number 3 of 2023, second reading.
Honorable members, this is a resumption of a debate that we had on the matter that was interrupted on Wednesday, 19th of April, 2023. And honorable senators, I propose the question that the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bills number 3 of 2023, be now read a second time. Senator Cherargei Samson Kiprotich.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity. I want to thank the Committee on Finance and Budget for this Senate bill, the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill 2023. Mr. Speaker, the genesis of this bill is Article 204 of the Constitution of Kenya, where the Equalization Fund is supposed to be given effect, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, since 2013 up to today, either we have been using regulations as has been passed before to allow allocations of funds, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I think it is the right time to have the Equalization Funds Appropriation Bill 2023 in place to ensure, Mr. Speaker, sir, that all of the monies that are meant for our people should go, especially for roads, for schools, what we call the basics, Mr. Speaker, and that was the real intention of Equalization Fund, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this bill is a bill to authorize the issuance of sum of money out of Equalization Fund and its applications towards this, the service before the end of 30th June on basic services, Mr. Speaker, including water, roads, health facilities, and electricity to marginalized areas, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you have to note 34 counties have been captured, and Nandi is one of the counties that have been captured, and I'm happy. I know there is an argument that under Article 204, Mr. Speaker, that counties should be specific to marginalized areas. But through the CRA, Commission of Revenue Allocation, there is a formula. And I'm happy out of 47 counties, 34 were able to qualify. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I said traditional poverty that we know is totally different. And that is why when you go to Kiambu, Kiambu could be one of the wealthiest counties, Mr. Speaker, but you have the up and poor. When you come to Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, there are many families that go without food, and they are what we call urban poor, Mr. Speaker. With the creation of infrastructural evictees, that when infrastructure is being built, Mr. Speaker, we evict Kenyans, especially Ruai when COVID happened, and many other areas, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, in all honesty, that is why they qualified as marginalized. I think the aspect of marginalization needs to be rechanged and to debated on, Mr. Speaker, and looking at the bill on a number of counties, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we need to appreciate that traditional, and that is why even now at the moment we're having a conversation. We have had a conversation on CRA formula, Mr. Speaker. We have been having a discussion on the issue of 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling, or 1 man, 1 vote, 1 kilometer, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it has been a conversation. Because sometimes, even I had on the issue of CTF, where people are arguing that when you go to northern part of Kenya, they are able to pay maybe the school fees for the entire, when the population is low. When you come to Ruiru or Roysambu constituency, the population is quite high, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, these are conversations that Equalization Fund should at least try, Mr. Speaker, because even if you don't have a road in Mandera, sometimes you have failed to have a road in Kibra, in Muguru Kwanjenga, somewhere in Nandi, where I come from, Mr. Speaker. Tindred, for example, is normally prone to landslide. This is the season for raining. Even when you go to your county, Bomet, like some parts of Bomet, I think in Chebalungu constituency, Mr. Speaker, it also, it continues parts of like Chebunyo, Nyangores, Sigor, some part of those areas in Bomet County, Mr. Speaker, also have similar problems. To some people, Bomet looks like they have tea, but when you look at the other parts, like in Nyeri, when you go to Kieni, it has similar challenges, Mr. Speaker, just the way the challenges they face also in Kitui County. It is that the enormity of such challenges might not be as big as many people would expect, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I think this Equalization Fund, our colleagues from the traditionally, Mr. Speaker, the issue of traditionally marginalized regions is no longer traditionally marginalized. I've talked about up and poor. Where you go, in fact, when you go to Mandera, people are living in better hygienic conditions than in Kibra, than in Muguru Kwanjenga, than in pipeline areas, Mr. Speaker. Because at the end of this, they don't have water here in Nairobi, and they are in the city where GDP, 60% of GDP is there. They don't have roads, they don't have toilets, they don't have food. So it shows you there is up and poor that needs to be addressed and use equalization fund to address affirmatively in those areas, Mr. Speaker. Even in Nandi, we thank God. We have tea, we have coffee, we have sugarcane, we have milk. Essentially, as a source of champions, we look like we have everything. But some areas in Nandi, like Tindred Sub-County, part of Kapchorwa ward in Nandi's constituency, Mr. Speaker, is a challenge. Even Soba Songo ward, Mr. Speaker, is also a challenge. And therefore, I'm happy that, and I'm happy of one thing, that this money will not be given through CRF, County Revenue Fund, Mr. Speaker, because it's more of affirmative areas, Mr. Speaker. And it is, for example, in Nandi, and I have indicated Kapchorwa, Mr. Speaker, Kapchorwa ward will receive 16,672,96. That is Nandi Hills constituency will relieve in total 16.672936. That is 16 million plus will go to Nandi Hills constituency, and specifically to Kapchorwa. So I hope in the implementation, let us also give priority to the people of Kapchorwa ward in Nandi Hills sub-county to sit as Kapchorwa residents and agree on priority, especially within roads, because the roads in Kapchorwa ward is very pathetic, Mr. Speaker. When you talk, when it rains now, they are inaccessible, they are cut off from the rest of Nandi, Mr. Speaker. The schools that need to be upgraded, the issue of electricity becomes a challenge. And therefore, when you go to Tindred constituency, I'm happy that Chemelil, Chemase, it might look like they have gold, Mr. Speaker. They grow a lot of sugarcane, and Kibo Sugar Factory and Miwani and West Kenya get a lot of nucleus, which Chemase, Chemelil is part of it. They get their sugarcane to go and crush. And I'm happy when Jubilee government, governed by Handshake, my brother, Senator Wambu, was the first chairperson on agriculture, and we went and sat with those farmers in Chemelil, and he was able to him, as a visitor, he might have thought that we are living in land of honey and milk, but Chemelil, Chemase ward has its own challenges. It's a very hot area. The roads are still a challenge. The issue of electricity is still a challenge. Chemelil, Chemase ward in Tindred constituency, and I'm happy they have been allocated for affirmative action in terms of equalization fund. They have been given 15,805,883, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, even in Songo Soba, the roads there are very pathetic, Mr. Speaker. The electricity is still a challenge in Songo Soba ward, and therefore the Soba Songo ward, Mr. Speaker, is one of the biggest wards in Nandi, outside Kilibwani ward. And therefore Soba Songo ward is still a challenge. The roads to Sokosik, or from the way Konanyanya, all the way to Taunet, to Kabrer, all the way to Kibukwa, Mr. Speaker, all the way you go through, and then you come out through Maraba Center, the hospital there. There are many roads within Soba Songo, and it's a big, Mr. Speaker, and you have to appreciate that Tindred has a very unique topography. It's a blessing from God, but the maintenance of roads, how you need to do it, and those are those roads, Mr. Speaker. So I'm happy Soba Songo has received the highest with 108 million Kenya shillings, 851,992. So, and Tindred ward, Mr. Speaker, where in our local language, and I think you know this, when lightning is seen, Mr. Speaker, they normally say, so it means, Mr. Speaker, when the lighting, I'm translating, Mr. Speaker.
Stick to the parliamentary language.
Yes, they say, Mr. Speaker, when you come from Masap, where I come from, and you see the lightning shining at the Tindred, we know it's ready for planting season. So that's part of Tindred ward that shares even up to Wazingishu and many other areas. I'm happy in Tindred ward, Mr. Speaker, they have a total of 15,685,704 that will allow them to improve electricity, water, roads and schools, Mr. Speaker, so that is affirmative. So Tindred ward also has not been left out, it's part of Tajasis. You remember the famous Father Boel. Those are missionaries who tried and improved the lives. Although he died tragically, Father Boel is renowned, is dear to many many Nandi residents, especially from Tajasis area, Tindre, Taptengele. Those are areas, Mr. Speaker, that have been very important, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in total, Mr. Speaker, the constituency of Tindred will get 140,343,580. 140 million plus will go to 3 wards in Tindred, Soba Songo, Chemelil, Chemase, and Tindred will get 140 million plus. Kapchorwa ward is 16 plus million. Mr. Speaker, we are happy we are getting close to 200 million plus that will go through equalization fund to assist projects, especially the basics as per article and vision of Article 204, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't know why the Deputy Minority Leader is concerned, yet he sits in Senate Business Committee, and they are the ones that generate what we do on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, so this is a very important, bill, and I think Senator Wambua and me are ranking members, and he knows that under Article 96, we have a role to protect devolution. And as a leader, he is the one who ensures that we allocated sufficient time to canvass and put across our points. I will take into consideration what he is saying. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the law, this one should be passed as a bipartisan. I know, Mr. Speaker, a bipartisan has another meaning, Mr. Speaker, but this bill should be passed in, is it consensus? Let me not use the word bipartisan, because this is an important bill, Mr. Speaker. It's all 34 counties, whether they are from Azimio or Kenya Kwanza, all of them are here. As a Senate, we just need to pass. In fact, I don't know whether Kisii, you know Kisii is where God resides. So I think they don't have many problems, unlike other areas. But, Mr. Speaker, we normally get unique cases from Kisii. That's a story we can have a discussion with my brother, Senator Onyonga, who is a very good company, Mr. Speaker, especially in the evenings. He can give you very good stories, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what we need to, when you look at the appropriation bill, this 13 billion that is meant for these counties, and Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether it was Senator Wambua or Senator Ledama who said under Article 219, when the money is appropriated, it should be dispersed immediately. Mr. Speaker, the Treasury continues to violate Article 219. Because, Mr. Speaker, whenever we collect revenue, we pay, yes, the public debt. The sharing between national government and county government is very clear. Why is it that the National Treasury should allocate, I'm told, more than 129 billion from January to now are yet to be dispersed to counties, Mr. Speaker? I have heard, Mr. Speaker, through your office and the clerk's office, you have always been called us for special sitting to pass cash disbursement schedule, Mr. Speaker. Counties are coming to a complete shutdown. I want to appeal to the CS Treasury. As much as we agree that there are challenges in terms of collecting revenue because of political temperatures, that my brothers continue to put it very high. Every time, Mr. Speaker, be it when they're in the church, they're in a funeral, they are doing iftar dinner, or wherever, Mr. Speaker, that is, we cannot be able to realize. Mr. Speaker, you are aware that the budget is 3.6 trillion. The president has been deliberate to cut by 300 billion the government that the Jubilee government, governed by handshake, was able to raise, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are looking at 2.9 trillion KRA projections, Mr. Speaker. We were being told there were tax reliefs, and I'm happy Senator Onyonga brought a statement to discuss if there are any challenges with the economy. Mr. Speaker, I want to say, in the last financial year, there were many issues that were being raised before the floor of House, that tax exemptions, tax reliefs, were going up to high of 370 billion, Mr. Speaker. There were even allegations that imports from China, Mr. Speaker, of 400 billion were never paid for, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if we tighten the collection of the revenue in the country, Mr. Speaker, we shall be able to finance. But my appeal, you know, will be like rocking a chair, singing music, guitar to our God, Mr. Speaker. If we don't do in a way, Mr. Speaker, you know, there is a reggae song that when you look outside the window, do you see anything to smile about? Mr. Speaker, we should protect our, and even in the song, I think Lucky Dube says, If you see there are more, they say, Mr. Speaker, in that song, I don't know the title of the song, that if you look outside and we are building more prisons than the schools, Mr. Speaker, there is a problem. But that problem needs to be resolved. When we pass a budget here, Mr. Speaker, the Treasury must release the money to the relevant entities of government so that it can function. And I'm happy one of the flagship projects of the President is taking off steadily and slowly, the Hustler Fund. And I want to encourage the young people from Kitui, from Kisii, where my brother Onyonga comes from, to take up the Hustler Fund and to pay back. I know there has been a narrative that take it and don't pay. Mr. Speaker, this is a revolving fund. We want our young people to be good business people. If the respected bishop, senator, Mr. Speaker, deputy minority leader of the House, a ranking member, you know he should be the one encouraging Kitui youth. I know politically correct, to be politically correct, he can say that in a rally somewhere in Kakamega, but I want to encourage him when he's in Katutu Parish to encourage young people to take that money and be able to. Even my brother, Senator Onyonga, Senator Catherine Muma, I know she's a fiery lady who has been in this politics for some time. Mr. Speaker, finally on 13.9 billion, because I know my time is spent, is that the committee report looks quite okay, but I think we might need amendment at some point to ensure that we amend, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we need to discourage this use of rules and regulations. The High Court ruled in 2015 that we need a standalone legislation or legal instrument to govern this. And Mr. Speaker, if this is not going to CRF, I don't know whether it will come audit for Public Accounts Committee, where I am the vice chair, Mr. Speaker, because now it's not going to CRF. They should be able to tell us who will oversight. Is it the Public Investment Committee of the National Assembly? Is it the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly? Or will it land to where you was truly is presiding over, Mr. Speaker, so that we can have clear cut of results, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, controller of budget, I want to ask the controller of budget to be able to be releasing this amount of money as per Article 219. That's how we can develop our counties, Mr. Speaker, and ensure. Looking at the committee reports, Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the issue of, they have said, and you know, Mr. Speaker, I take an exception in one statement in closing remarks, that future draft determined poverty index should also, feminization of poverty criteria. And then it goes ahead, most women and girls face secondary discrimination. Hence, their plight is not recognized, and that's the need to put them into consideration from the onset. So, Speaker, boy child is endangered. So, Speaker, there is only one man we are going to appoint in Chairman's Conference. He's called Akraf Hakimi, who was sued by the wife for divorce. But, Mr. Speaker, he had taken the whole money to the mother. I'm not saying we should encourage mommy's boys and mommy's boys, but that man should be the chairman of men's conference. Mr. Speaker, the boy child is failing extinction. Everything that we make, Mr. Speaker, anywhere is about the girl child. Talk about sanitary pads. No one is saying, let us give the girl sanitary pads, we give boxers or briefs to the young men, because we need also to be hygienic. You know, these are young men also, so that as we make sure women are properly hygienic because of their unique nature, the young people. So, Mr. Speaker, when men's conference shall be called next time, that guy called Hakimi is a player. I'm forgetting he was a Moroccan player, Mr. Speaker. With those very, very remarks, I want to say I support and look forward to bringing more amendments to make it. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and see the ground for Senator Wambua.
Senator Cherargei. Is it official that there will be a man's conference, or rather a men's conference? You will be the vice chair. Honorable Senator Muma Muyeka Catherine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to speak to this very important bill. Mr. Speaker, the Equalization Fund is an affirmative action fund. As a beneficiary of affirmative action in this House, I am passionate about the role that affirmative action tools play in the equalization of society at large. Mr. Speaker, we are at a very critical point as a Senate. We are in the final stages of the budgeting process. Contrary to those who feel that Senate does not participate in the budgeting process, this is it. We are actually participating in the legislative approval of the finance bills that have been put before us. Mr. Speaker, it is important that we play our role during this time with a lot of passion. Mr. Speaker, because the role of the Senate is around the county governments, and it is during this time that we are able to protect the interest of counties in terms of the appropriations that they, or the equitable share that they get to receive. Mr. Speaker, the equalization fund is provided for under Article 2 or 4 of the Constitution. That is one of the clauses that is extremely clear. Mr. Speaker, contrary to the belief that the government of Jubilee was people-centered, Mr. Speaker, 4 years, 5 years after 2013, the equalization fund was not operationalized. Mr. Speaker, if the government then really cared about the marginalized and the need to bring up the areas that are marginalized, Mr. Speaker, this is the one fund that should actually have been operationalized much, much earlier. Mr. Speaker, the bill before us, the appropriation bill before us, is actually for the 2 years preceding. This is 2021-2022 and 2022-2023. So in fact, we are not looking at the appropriation bill for the financial year beginning 2023-2024. So I wish to call on all the senators that even as we pass this bill, because it's better to have one bird in hand than chase the two in the bush, even as we pass this bill, I'm requesting that we must immediately ask the Finance Committee to go back to the drawing board and in the next few days bring the appropriation bill on the equalization fund for the year 2023-2024. Then we will be up to date. Mr. Speaker, we have been told to appropriate 13.8 billion, which is the amount that should go to the equalization fund in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. The Constitution provides for 0.5% of the revenues collected nationally. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, we have received the report that of the 13.8 billion, 3.5 has been hived off. Mr. Speaker, I would want us to record that that is unconstitutional because it is not up to Treasury to determine how much money goes to the equalization fund. That is provided for in the Constitution, Mr. Speaker. So the reduction of that money is unconstitutional, and I would wish that the Senate will actually carry out and bring this to the attention of the House and seek to ensure that the 3.5 billion is appropriated, whether in later times, but we need to make good that, otherwise we are encouraging the national government to engage in lawlessness. Mr. Speaker, last time I heard His Excellency the President William RUTO speak, he is encouraging that we respect the rule of law. Mr. Speaker, the law number one that we must respect is the Constitution. And in this particular instance, the Constitution has defined the amount or the percentage we need to put in the equalization fund, and we need that percentage to be appropriated and put in the equalization fund in accordance with the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, The other issue I would want to speak to, I know that the fund is supposed to benefit areas that are marginalized, possibly areas that were historically marginalized, and it is supposed to bring it to par with other areas that are more developed. Mr. Speaker, what is not clear, even though we have been given some guidance by CRA, what is not clear is whether the CRA has also put in place an index that can assist Senate to know that marginalized area X has since moved from point A to B and now is still either on the schedule of the marginalized or is not on the schedule of the marginalized. Mr. Speaker, I would wish to ask that even as we think through how the Senate is going to oversight the implementation by counties of this fund, Mr. Speaker, that we should get a special committee to put an index that will assist us to be able to tell Kenyans that this fund was intended to bring certain levels of development, and it has done so, or it has failed to do so. Mr. Speaker, this is also a fund that is supposed to be implemented by county as a conditional grant, moving from national government to the counties. Mr. Speaker, I'm aware that the National Assembly is also trying to come up with a bill to try and get the equalization fund to be implemented as a constituency fund. Whereas we note that the marginalized areas identified by CRA are situated in constituencies, Mr. Speaker, I would urge that the Senate ensure that we stick to the provisions of the Constitution on this fund. The Constitution is very clear. It's a national fund, but which is supposed to be given to counties as a conditional grant towards the implementation of a number of functions, which in fact are devolved functions, including water, roads, health facilities, electricity, and so on. Mr. Speaker, it says including water, roads, which means that the CRA must not be fixated with only the ones that have been named here. The CRA should also be able to find other matrices or other criteria and other indicators that can help us to identify marginalization and also include them in this decision. Mr. Speaker, the Equalization Fund has a sunset clause. It is expected to come to an end after 20 years. But this is the one fund, as I have said, which was not implemented by the Jubilee government, which was there for 10 years and did not do anything about implementing this fund. Mr. Speaker, I would ask that the Senate consider passing a law to recommend either the extension of the time, because now we have about 7 to 8 years to go since promulgation of the Constitution. Either we extend this term to ensure that the 20 years are achieved, or in the alternative, we get the government to commit within the next 7 years to deploy all the arrears. And Mr. Speaker, as we speak at 2023, the arrears are approximately 43 billion. Funds that should have been put in the equalization fund were never put in the equalization fund, therefore were not deployed to the counties or to the areas that are marginalized. Mr. Speaker, I have had a few senators from different counties also feel that they come from counties and also have areas that have been marginalized. They feel they have been excluded in the 1,414 marginalized areas that have been identified by CRA. Mr. Speaker, I suggest that the Senate look at this issue in a more scrutinized manner to ensure that we are not excluding any marginalized area in a county because maybe the formula of CRA did not capture a marginalized issue in a particular area. And Mr. Speaker, even as we come up with those indices or indicators on marginalization, I wish to request that the CRA, the Senate urges the CRA to also come up, include indices like gender, disability, minority ethnicity, and so on, as parameters that can be included in considering marginalization. So overall, Mr. Speaker, I'm requesting the Senate and senators to request the Finance Committee to immediately bring the appropriation bill for the Equalization Fund for the year 2023-2024 for consideration. It should also bring the issue about the outstanding 43 billion that needs to be given to counties, and should start the consultations to ensure that we have a criteria and possibly a fund that the Senate can use to ensure oversight of these funds once they start going to the counties. I beg to support.
Senator Wambua Enoch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to also make a contribution to the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill 2023. The Speaker, I want to begin by saying that this is really long overdue. As previous senators have said in their contribution, this is a bill that should have been brought to the Senate at the return of devolution, or the House of the Senate, in 2013. I say this, Mr. Speaker, because one of the issues that successive governments have been struggling with is a question of even distribution of resources to counties, the failure of which has given birth to regions that we refer to as marginalized. An admission on our part as leadership and as governments that we have not done a good job in ensuring that the resources that are collected nationally are shared equitably in a way that people across the country enjoy the fruits of development. The Speaker, the fund, as captured in Article 204 of the Constitution, is very clear on the amounts of money that should go to this fund. It is 0.5% of revenue collected nationally. And so, Mr. Speaker, the question that Senator Muma is raising, or the matter that she is raising, is a matter that we cannot be debating. The Treasury cannot and must never be allowed to decide how much money should go into this fund and how much money they should slice off for whatever function outside of the fund as prescribed in Article 204. The Speaker, the whole idea, and we have walked a long journey in getting to where we are today. When I joined the Senate, the Speaker, in the year 2017, to my dismay, I was told that Kitui was not in the list of marginalized counties. So we were never supposed to benefit from this fund. We engaged with the CRA, and I remember a meeting that I had with the CRA in their office, and quarreled on behalf of the people of Kitui County. Because the Speaker, and this was something that anybody should be proud of. If you walk outside this building and probably ask people at random to tell you some of the areas that are dry in this country, probably out of 10 people, 6 or 7 could mention Kitui, even those who have not been there. So when I came in and I was told that Kitui does not qualify, I was terrified. And we engaged in a serious fight. I am happy now, Mr. Speaker, that the conversation has changed from marginalized counties to marginalized areas or villages in counties. And with that, now we have Kitui East, we have areas in Choloni Ward, and in fact, Mr. Speaker, the day before yesterday, I was having a conversation with the member of the County Assembly of Choloni Ward. I was very excited that finally his ward has been included in the list of marginalized areas. Of course, not happy because he is a leader in an area that is marginalized, but happy that at least there is now hope that some money could go down there and assist his people. And so we have Choloni Ward, we have Endau Malalani, we have Mutitu Kaliku, we have Vochamatu, and Zombe Mweteka. In total, the Kitui East constituency, 178 million Kenya shillings will be going there to assist in the specified areas of roads, water, earth, and electricity. And for that, Mr. Speaker, we can only be grateful and hopeful that before these monies find their way to areas where they are needed, another obstacle will not arise on the way and stop the disbursement of these monies. And that's why I wish to very respectively differ with the position taken by Senator Muma, that we begin to ask questions as to whether areas that were marginalized in 2013 are still marginalized in 2023. Because if we take that route, the Speaker, what is going to happen is that before we complete that study, maybe in 2025, we'll be asking the question whether the areas that were marginalized in 2023 are still marginalized in 2025. And we will never start rolling out these funds. Let us start rolling out these funds now and do reviews as the fund is operational. I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker, that in Kitui South, we have several areas that will benefit from this fund. Adi Ward, Ikanga Chatuni Ward, Kanziku Ward, and Moda Ward. In total, 124 million Kenya shillings will be going to Kitui South constituency in areas that have been earmarked as marginalized. And I can only hope that this money, when it gets there, then it will go into good use, and our people will be part of the team. Then that will actualize the dream of the drafters of the Constitution, that their livelihoods, their standards of living, especially in matters relating to water, roads, health, and electricity will be brought closer to the national average of the people enjoying those services. The Speaker, in Mwingi Central, I am happy that Gune Ward, No Ward, and Waita Ward have been considered to receive a total of 78 million Kenya shillings. Again, I'm hopeful that the areas of Gune, No, and Waita, which have been earmarked to receive this funding, will also benefit, and the standards of living in that area will be brought to almost par with the national average. And then lastly, the Speaker, we have Mwingi North, where marginalized regions in Chuso Ward, in Mumone Ward, in Ngomene Ward, in Tharaka Ward, and in Sikuru Ward, bringing a total of 153 million Kenya shillings to Mwingi North. The Speaker, in Mwingi North, if there is a place in this country that the definition of marginalization would apply, it's a region called Tharaka. Recently, we fought for them and they got a sub-county called Tharaka-Lagishu sub-county. And the battle has not stopped there. We are now pushing for divisions and locations and sub-locations. This is an area, Mr. Speaker, in Kitui County, inhabited by the Tharaka people, in Kitui County, an entire sub-county. It's to the north of the county, bordering now their ancestors, their friends, their relatives in the Tharaka County. So what happens with these people is that in Kitui County, they feel like, and rightfully so, they are marginalized. They are at the edge. Kitui County is basically a Kamba-speaking county. But then in their neighboring county, which is Tharaka-Nithi, where now their relatives live, they cannot get services from there because they don't belong there. They belong to the other side. So they are lost in between. The Speaker, I am happy that they have made the list of the marginalized areas in Mwingi North, and that these people of Tharaka then can benefit from roads. The road network there is awful. Access to water is a big problem for them. Electricity is a pipe dream. And of course, health services are what they are there. So I'm happy that at least now the Tharaka people, alongside other marginalized areas in my county, have been listed to benefit from this fund. The Speaker, in total, Kitui County is going to be receiving 534 million Kenya shillings. I can only be grateful if this money then is received and gets into good use. The Speaker, allow me to say this, that when matters like this come to the floor of the Senate, this is one instance where senators are called upon to show and to demonstrate leadership. There are going to be issues arising from this list. There will be people we lead who will feel that in their own estimation, they are marginalized, they should have benefited, and yet they have not been listed to benefit. There will be other people who will be feeling that Yes, we have been earmarked to benefit from the fund, but we believe we could have gotten a little more. The Speaker, it has been more than 10 years since the drafters of the Constitution gave us this document, and Kenyans passed it unanimously, almost unanimously, that we needed to create this fund so that we develop areas that then were not properly developed. The Speaker, my appeal to my colleagues is that let us demonstrate bipartisanship on this matter of the equalization fund. Let us pass this bill. And after passing this bill, then let's push Treasury to release funds. I have read that the report of the committee that this bill or this fund, the funds should not go to the county revenue fund. That will be an issue of debate, the Speaker. Because one of the things that we must also be very clear about as we pass this bill is to ask ourselves the question, Senator Boni Alwade, so these 13 billion Kenya shillings that should be released to the equalization fund, how shall the functions under those funds be oversighted? How shall we hold the people responsible for rolling out those funds in those areas accountable? And you know, Mr. Speaker and honorable members, it always sounds very good in this Senate when we fight for money to go to our counties. But things turn south when you start asking the question as to how these monies are being used. The Speaker, it is now almost 6:30. Senator Alwale is seated here. Senator Peris Tobiko is seated here. Senator Ambue is on the floor. We are trying to fight for money to go to counties. And the governors, whatever they are happy. Senator Alwale thinks they are taking whiskey. Some of them don't take whiskey, but they are taking what they take. Mr. Speaker, they should equally be positively responsive to questions of audit on the use of monies that we send to our counties. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I wish to commend the committee for a job well done. And it is my hope and prayer, Mr. Speaker, that we will take the shortest time possible to pass this bill, and get the funds to help our people and develop this country equitably. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I support.
Senator Alwale Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish it was a full house when the Senator of Kitui was addressing us. He has raised very many issues that formed food for thought about where we want to take this country. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support and want this afternoon to speak not to the letter, but to the spirit of Article 204 of the Constitution that gave effect to the Equalization Fund. Every time I look at what has happened in the last 5 years and Speaker, you are not in the House. Senator Perez Tobiko was not in the House. But Senator Enoch Wambua was there. I don't know what happened. They went for the letter in the last 5 years and completely moved away from the spirit. The letter then became, go around with a microscope across the 47 counties. See if there is any little location, division, sublocation, or village, or polling station where people are faced with challenges, quote unquote, of what would be defined as being marginalized. So the noble spirit of Article 204, which was to right the wrong that was done to the people of Kenya by a policy of government that was based on a paper that they called the sessional paper number 10 of 1965, we were supposed to write that. And what happened? While we were away, Mr. Speaker, Murang'a County found itself on the list. Bungoma County from Western found itself on the list. What a lie. Lack of a philosophy when you are governing a country is one of the most dangerous things. Mr. Speaker, 1963, it was clear the philosophy of the founders of the nation was African socialism. They went all out of the way to make sure that they keep on pushing development to improve the socioeconomic status of our people. Out went Kenyatta, and Moi came in, and President Moi said, wait a minute. This African socialism is a good thing. It has been pushed by my boss. Let me carry it on. So he brought it with the spirit of perpetual succession of government, which they called at that time Nyayo. That is the principle of perpetual succession of government. President Moi, he might not have the degrees that Molo and Sarah, Kabata, and all of you have, but he understood government. He called it Nyayo. Come Mwai Kibaki, the gentleman saw that we needed a new philosophy, moving away from perpetual succession, and Kibaki told us, we are only going to succeed if the nation decides to work. So Kibaki says our philosophy is going to be for 10 years, the working nation that pays taxes. But come in the Jubilee government, no philosophy. And people came here and started sharing equalization funds like robbers. How would people of Bungoma, of Murang'a, and the others compete with Turkanas, really? Have you ever been to Kitui? You know, the parts described by the honorable member, sometimes they don't see rain, not for months, but for years. Why would Bungoma compete with it when our problem in Western is that we have too much rain in a year? And the purpose of this fund, Mr. Speaker, sir, was to give people water, to give people health, to give people electricity, connectivity. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll come again.
Senator Dr. Boni Halale, how I wish I didn't have to interrupt you. Honorable members, it is now 6:30 p.m., time to adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until tomorrow, Thursday, 20th April 2023 at 2:30 p.m. Senator Boni, you will have your 15 minutes to continue tomorrow when the House resumes.
Most obliged.